Hello friends of the electrified charging fun and welcome to Electrified Speicher. Recuperation, regeneration, regenerative braking. It sounds like something from a physics lesson, but in everyday life of an electric car, it's almost like magic. That's because deceleration generates electricity. And that's not only saving us brake pads, but also energy. It's an invisible efficiency booster that everyone should know about. In my beginner series, if you didn't watch it, you'll find it here on the channel, I showed you that the ELROQ and the ENYAQs always regenerates, regardless of whether you gently take your foot off the accelerator pedal, or just brake with the brake pedal, or use the pedals on the steering wheel. And the efficiency video was all about how it's better not to invest the energy in first place and let the car roll instead. But the big difference comes when you do have to brake. How exactly does regeneration, recuperation work? What are the technical limits of it? How strong is the braking effect? And when do the brake lights come on? And how much energy can you really recover with it? I'll take you on this journey, of course with practical examples, on the motorway and in the supreme discipline of regeneration on an alpine pass, driven all in an ELROQ 85 and followed by a bit of evaluation and technical deep dive. So there should be something for everyone, for my carefree everyday explorers as well as for my number-loving analysts. Let's go. Well, this video is more on the techie side of life and maybe too techie for you. Yet we have to tackle a bit of theory to fully understand what's this all about, this regenerative braking, and therefore let's start with the basics. What is braking? Well, braking means to get rid of kinetic energy. A car has a mass and a speed, which together creates kinetic energy. When we brake, this energy has to be dissipated. There are basically only two reasonable ways to do it, and the first way is to convert it into heat. That's conventional braking. Brake discs and pad rub against each other, the kinetic energy is converted into heat through friction and disappears, well, in the air. Result, 100% of that energy is lost for driving. Or the second one, that is to convert it into another usable form of energy. Electric drives can convert that kinetic energy into electricity when braking. This electricity is stored back in your battery and can be used later for driving. And this is what we call recuperation or regeneration, or in full, regenerative braking. Now let's dive a bit deeper into how this works technically. Well, regeneration is not an additional feature, but a basic principle of an electric drive. The same machine that accelerates an electric car can also generate electricity, as we already heard. The difference just lies in the direction of the current flow and the torque. Well, let's walk through this process step by step. First we have kinetic energy. The car is rolling. We turn that kinetic energy into mechanical work. The axle turns the rotor in the stator. This leads to induction. The motor produces electricity, now working as a generator. So we are inducing a voltage and getting power. Then your power electronics kick in. They are converting the alternating current into direct current for the battery. And there, the battery management system is already waiting to decide how much current the battery can accept. And then the battery cells just store the energy electrochemically. So let's talk about the motors in your ELROQ or ENYAQ, because depending on the model you drive, rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, you've got one or two of those, and they are different. So let's start with the one everyone has, and this is on the rear axle. This is a PSM, a permanent magnet synchronous machine. These machines have big advantages, but also some disadvantages. The advantage? High efficiency and instantly ready for regeneration. And they are efficient both in braking and in driving. But this comes always with a disadvantage. They always have a small residual drag torque, they are not completely free spinning, they are more expensive, and they require rare earth, because they have permanent magnets, as the name states. So they are also always minimally active. That's why when coasting you often see a small blue bar on the display. When you've got an all-wheel drive, well, you've got a second electric motor on the front axle. This is not a PSM, this is an ASM, an asynchronous machine. And again, this machine comes with advantages because there is no permanent magnetic field. The asynchronous machine does not have permanent magnets, so it can freewheel with almost no loss. It's cheaper, no rare earth is used, but again it comes with disadvantages. It has a much lower efficiency in both driving and regeneration. It needs to build up the magnetic field first because it does not have a permanent one, and therefore there is a slight delay. That's why they put this machine on the front axle, where it is only used when needed. You might have an ELROQ 85 with 210 kilowatts or even an ENYAQ RS with 250 kilowatts. So is that what you can recuperate or regenerate? Well, no, there are technical limits which you have to take into account. The first and most important one I call battery acceptance rate. Batteries can handle only so much of energy. We call it C rate. That is the charging speed relative to the capacity. And you already know that from charging the battery at the fast charger, because simply that is what you do here when you regenerate. So we can of course already say the limit is the fast charging capacity, the maximum fast charging capacity. And therefore we can also apply everything that applies to a fast charging process. So a rather full battery with a high SOC at a low temperature, well, the possibly charging power will drop significantly. This also applies for regeneration, so don't be at winter at an alpine pass on the top with a full battery. The battery management system therefore dynamically controls the regeneration. It has to protect the cells. Then let's talk a bit about the power electronics. They basically transfer the direct current in your battery into alternating current for your motors to drive, because your motors run with alternating current. And when you turn the whole thing around, well, you have to transform alternate current into direct current for the battery. And the good thing here is it's the same power electronics as you simply reverse it. So no additional hardware needed, because it would be odd to have hardware for this on board when normally this is integrated into the fast charger, right? And then we should also take into account axle load and driving behavior, because at the end of the day, regenerating is braking. The braking force from the electric motor has to be transferred to the road via your tires. And with low axle load or poor traction when it's wet or icy, the system has to reduce the regeneration to avoid slip. Fine. But how strong can my ENYAQ or ELROQ now regenerate? You didn't mention any numbers. The first ENYAQs with software version 3, so the first generation of these cars, were capable of a maximum regenerative braking of 75 kilowatts. Then mechanical brakes took over. And then with the second technical generation, starting at software version 4.0, where they implemented the new driving motors, well, it changed. The large battery with 77 kilowatt hours can, for a small amount of time, regenerate up to 145 kilowatts, and then goes down to a continuous power of regeneration from 77 to 89 kilowatts, which is also the continuous power output of your motor. And for the smaller batteries, also starting at software version 5, well, the 50 can go for a short amount to 90 kilowatts, the 60 to 110. Afterwards, both drop down to about 70 kilowatts of continuous regeneration. And the plug-in hybrids, let's say a Kodiaq iV, well, this has a peak of 85 kilowatts and will then drop down to 55 kilowatts of regeneration power. So for all ENYAQ and ELROQs as of today, the last mentioned values with the large or the smaller batteries should apply in reality. We know now how it works, and we know how much we could possibly regenerate. Let's talk about brake force distribution and brake light logic. Because in modern electric cars, deceleration is always an intelligent mix of electric and mechanical braking. The goal is simple: regenerate as much as possible. So your car will primarily use regenerative braking, so your e-machine produces braking torque and charges the battery. Mechanical braking only when needed, and there is a seamless transition between electric braking and mechanical braking, and this mixed strategy is called brake blending. And the better a manufacturer can do that blending, the better it feels for you as a driver. One of the most regular asked questions in my mailbox is about brake lights and brake light logic. When do they come on? And to answer this question to you, well, we have to dig into the EU UN regulations for that. Yes, there's a regulation for that. It's the number 13H, and the following thresholds apply for brake light activation during automatically initiated braking, though through regeneration, not through pressing the brake pedal. And the regulation is quite simple. Below 0.7 meters per second square deceleration, the brake light must not come on. Between 0.7 and 1.3 meters per second square, the brake lights may, but do not have to come on. Welcome to regulation. And above 1.3 meters per second square deceleration, the brake lights must come on. And for manual activation of the brake pedal and solely the brake pedal, the brake lights must always come on, regardless of the force of the deceleration. So a simple tip: with your foot on the brake pedal will engage the brake lights. What does that mean in practice for your ENYAQ and ELROQ? Well, I tested it, and we need to split the driving modes into D and B. When we go to D, we basically have 3 braking levels. And when you go to into level 1, well, you have an approximately deceleration of 0.6 meters per second square. So, according to the regulation, no brake light. And as you can see, no brake light. I did the test. When going to level 2, it is approximately 1 meter per second square. And Škoda implemented it the way that no brake light is applied. They could, according to the regulation, yet they don't. And when you go to level 3, you have approximately 1.3 meters second square of brake, and then the brake lights have to be on, and as you expect, they are on. When we now switch to mode B, it depends on the pedal position. So how much you lift the foot of the accelerator pedal to initiate brake force. And from about half the blue bar onwards, you will see braking lights. And when you lift the foot completely off the accelerator pedal, you are braking like in mode D with level 3, so about 1.3 meters per second square. But wait, Matthias, you're telling me I have constant deceleration and not constant kilowatts? Yes, of course. Regeneration maintains constant deceleration, not constant electric power. This is crucial for a predictive drive feeling. We can take the simple formula: power is force multiplied with speed. So let's imagine you drive a high speed and a low speed, and imagine if it would not be like it is. So when we want the same output in kilowatts and you drive a high speed, well, according to this formula, you need a gentle deceleration because that is your variable. Whilst at a low speed, with the same formula, you need very heavy braking to achieve the same amount of power. And this is simply not foreseeable for a driver. Therefore, you need a constant deceleration and not a constant power. That would be way too dangerous. You could now ask, why does the blue bar shrink? The blue bar is not constant. You are lying to me, Matthias. No, because the regeneration bar in your cars show power in kilowatt, not deceleration in meters per second square. So if you go, let's say, into level 3 when driving in mode D, the braking force is constant. Just remember the formula: power equals force multiplied with speed. So when speed drops, power drops too, because force is constant. And the bar gets smaller, simply because there is less power regenerated, but an additional technical limit applies here. And this has to do with another formula which also defines power. Power in watt equals voltage multiplied with current. And when we take that formula, we need to have again a look at our electric motor, because we already heard that there is a voltage induced. And at lower speeds the motor turns slower, less revolutions. And when the revolutions drop, well, there is a voltage drop. So to maintain the same power according to that formula, we would have to increase the current a lot. Yet they are limited by the cables, by the inverter, by the heat generation. Therefore we could not boost the current to whatever amount we want. So at a certain point where the revolutions are going down, this formula will simply lead to less power output. And of course it is also limited, like already stated, by the battery management system, depending on the state of charge and the temperature of the battery. And the rest, which is then left, will be handled by the mechanical brakes. Whoa, 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 my head is aching. This is so much theory. Stop it, please. Yes, I stop it here, because now we are starting with the practical part of this video, where I hit the road and drive and showcase you what regeneration is capable of. And we directly start with the supreme discipline of a mountain pass, where regeneration makes all the difference. And for the ultimate regeneration test, I drove from Vaduz in Liechtenstein, which is really close to me, up to a mountain village called Malbun, which is also in Liechtenstein. And this road has it all. 12 kilometers uphill, 1,200 meters elevation. So I went up and down again. This is such a fine road with many hairpins and plenty of incline. So fast as possible is limited to an extent, and you have a lot of acceleration on that road. And it would be even more interesting, right, when we compare this with, well, let's say a KAROQ, because the KAROQ is the combustion car equivalent to the ELROQ 85 I did the test drive with. But unfortunately I don't have a KAROQ. So yeah, you already expected this. We have to do a bit of theory and calculation here. I'm sorry, but it is really interesting, believe me, because I'll show you how I calculated beforehand for the ELROQ 85 what I think the energy demand will be. So the values for the KAROQ should be close to reality. So let's jump into it. And when you want to know how much energy you will spend on such a drive, well, you have to split that into several components where the energy will be used for. Well, there's the first part of the elevation gain, because simply you need to get to 1,200 meters of elevation done. Then you have the rolling resistance of the tires, you have the air resistance of the car, which is quite low because you will drive between 40 to, let's say, 60 kilometers an hour, and you have the auxiliary consumption for the AC, for example. You see all of this here in my little table, and then you get the total energy demand, which I calculated with 8.37 kilowatt hours. When we come to that value, this is not the truth, because you have losses in the drivetrain. So from the battery you will drag more power. And if I take 90% efficiency of an ELROQ 85 on that road, well, I would expect this car to use 9.3 kilowatt hours to get from Vaduz to Malbun. Now, let's look at the KAROQ, and we take the 2 liters TDE, so the diesel variant of the KAROQ, which only weighs 1,600 kilograms, and you will see that also in my calculation. We do the same calculation here, and this would lead to a total energy demand of 6.59 kilowatt hours compared to 8.37 kilowatt hours of the ELROQ. But now we have to take the efficiency of the diesel into account, and this is quite tricky, because how efficient is a diesel on such a mountain road? It is not driving in the optimum point. It has a lot of variable use. You need to speed and stuff like this. So I just took 3 values, 25, 30 and 35%, where the truth will be closer to 25 than 35%. And when I take that into account, you see the total needed energy will be between 19 and 26 kilowatt hours. Converted to diesel, it will be between 2 liters and 2 liters 0.7. And now we've come to the real results of my ELROQ 85 test drive. So I took the values via the OBD adapter directly from the car. The battery at the start was at 46 kilowatt hours, and at the top we went down to 36.8 kilowatt hours, and when we were back at the bottom, we were at 41.5 kilowatt hours. And the net consumption for the entire trip then is 4.5 kilowatt hours. And we can also read from the total amount of charge the regeneration downhill. It's 4.7 kilowatt hours. Let's put all values into one big table. And first off, you see how precise my calculations were. I calculated an energy consumption of 9.3 kilowatt hours uphill, and the ELROQ needed 9.2 kilowatt hours. So we were really close with that. So therefore the KAROQ values should also be quite precise. Let's look at the ELROQ. Uphill, it would be less than 1 liter of diesel equivalent. Driving downhill, we would have recuperated or regenerated half a liter of diesel, which of course is not possible. And in total, we used 460 milliliters of diesel, not even half a liter of diesel for the whole trip of 24 kilometers on a 1,200 meters elevation. And for the KAROQ, well, depending on the efficiency, let's be honest, it would be between 25 and 30% somewhat. You see my calculation. For going downhill, I assume that he could only roll. He did not need to accelerate, yet the motor, the engine is running in idle, therefore there is a bit of additional consumption. And you will end up with around 2.5, close to 3 liters of diesel with the KAROQ. So the efficiency benefit of the ELROQ is around 80%, or if you want it in another word, well, it is about 5 times more efficient on a mountain alpine pass than a combustion engine car. Now let's move to quite the opposite of an alpine pass, where regeneration has a hard time: motorway driving. So I took a spin on the motorway here in Switzerland, which is 120 kilometers an hour maximum, yet we have traffic works and stuff like that, so between 80 and 120. I drove 53 kilometers in about 37 minutes, and this leads to 86 kilometers an hour. It just was not possible to drive faster. The display shows 17.3 kilowatt hours 100 kilometers, and the measurements I took, well, at departure the battery was at 57.75 kilowatt hours. At arrival at 46.5 kilowatt hours, so I've got a net consumption of 11.25 kilowatt hours. The gross consumption, however, so the total discharge, is 12.9 kilowatt hours. There you can already see how I can calculate how much I regenerate, because that is the total amount I charge, and this is just 1.8 kilowatt hours. So we are here at 14% regeneration. And this is basically due to 3 motorway exits, and then of course I accelerated back on the motorway and the construction zones I went through. But the longer you drive a constant speed on the highway, the lower the regeneration is, thus the efficiency can drop below 10%. And then we have where regen is in its sweet spot. It's city driving. So just between the motorway result and the alpine pass result. Because in the city you have a lot of braking maneuvers, a lot of acceleration, deceleration. And I did a drive here in my city, just passing over to the neighbor's city, 12 kilometers, 25 minutes driving, average 30 kilometers an hour. The display shows 15.1 kilowatt hours 100 kilometers. And the battery, well, at departure 39.25 kilowatts, at arrival 37.35 kilowatts, which means 1.9 kilowatt hours net consumption. The gross consumption was 3.7 kilowatt hours. So cities are perfect for this, because braking, slowdown, traffic lights, intersections, pedestrians, whatever there is. Why is this value so high? Because that's how I drive, because I use all of my efficiency tips. I never over accelerate. I always let the car coast and then regenerate the rest of it. And then you get a really low consumption combined with a really good regeneration, which leads to such results. I hope you managed it to come to this chapter through all the theory, through all the stuff. And I know it's a long video and it's kind of tech video. Yet now you should know regeneration is way more than a bonus feature, but a basic principle of electric driving. And one that significantly contributes to efficiency alongside the electric drive itself. In the city, regeneration can often get you about 1/3 of the invested energy back. On the motorway, it hardly matters. Therefore, speed determines your consumption and with that air resistance. And in the mountains or on a hilly road or on a hilly country road, the difference to a combustion car is huge. More than half of the energy used uphill comes back. And this is so awesome. Therefore, I always tell people when they start electric driving, just drive somewhere uphill and downhill to experience this. Still, for maximum efficiency, let the car coast whenever possible. And before starting to coast, don't build up excess kinetic energy in the first place. But after this, there comes regeneration, recuperation. But remember also that cars are not built for energy production, but for propulsion, from getting from A to B. Therefore, everything which is better than regeneration should be applied before regeneration. We therefore have to take into account also that energy has to come out of the battery again. We didn't talk about that topic at all in this video yet. It is good to know, because this means that you convert only about 66, so 2/3 of the energy recovered from motion back into motion, because you have the losses from the motion in the battery, and you also have to take account the losses from the battery back to the road. But it is still so much better than just dissipating all that energy into heat. If this video was helpful for you, and you now better understand how all this regeneration works, well, I would love to see a thumbs up from you. And consider to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss out any new videos. Also share the video with everyone who might be interested in this topic, and consider to support me directly for content like this with this much effort in research. And you'll find those links down in the video description. Also, keep in mind, I can be wrong. I am neither perfect nor have I studied all of this. So let's discuss in the comments what I did wrong, where I said something which is not correct. And let's correct those mistakes for everyone down there. And then we see each other in the next video. And until then, stay full of energy.